Okay, so we're going to start Meleches Boirer, which is a seed that doesn't end. So, rule of life, when you're unprepared, have as many Sfarim and papers open in front of you to look like you know exactly what's going on. Yeah, that's my Hakdama. So, Boirer begins by the Hakdama of the Mishnah Berurah in Chelik Gimel, which he talks about Boirer, and many people want to be medayik his words. Over here, the Mishnah Berurah discusses, all about Shabbos, Merdik Ezachin. He says that, we have Ramachi Varim, Shasa Gidav, it's Keneged the Lavin, Naseis, Shabbos is Keneged Kulam. We mentioned the first day, the fascinating Yerushalmi that he quotes, that Rav Yechon and Reish Lakish looked through all of Meleches Shabbos, Lametes, Malachas. They found Lametes Toldos for every Malacha. We did the math. Lots and lots of halachis. And then, as the Mishnah Berurah teaches us why it's so important, he continues and he says, "V'chein be'isur boirer matzui ma'oid lihi koshel mimnei chesroin yidiyah." You can make mistakes because of your lack of knowledge. Now, what does that word chesroin yidiyah mean? What exactly does he mean? Derech mashal. Fascinating first example he dives into. Absolutely incredible. So what's the chesaron yidiyah that would have allowed you to make the right decision? What's the yidiyah that you're missing? No? What's chesaron yidiyah? Because if you go back, there's just the diak is, if you go back a moment prior, and when he says other examples, there he doesn't call it the problem with chesaron yidiyah. There he says, for example, if there's a fire on the table and you don't know what to do, you're going to call a guy. And then when he goes weiter, he says, he just says, so why here is it a chesaron yidiyah? This is the diak that there are those that want to make in the words of the Mishnah Berurah, which opens you up to the fact that many want to be medayik. Many don't, but many want to be medayik every word of the Mishnah Berurah, out of Seif, like Chazon Ish. So what does he mean, chesaron yidiyah? And then he continues, he says, for example, take the shuman from the chalav, it's simsum, it's a boirer, yaniach ma'at, letzad chalav, shika chalav ima, vod kamba v'kamba lach zochas boirer. So, what does he mean, chesaron yidiyah? Lack of knowledge. So, I don't know what he means. Does anyone have any idea what he means, chesaron yidiyah? Anyone? This is a real question you can answer. What does he mean, chesaron yidiyah? What do you not know? You don't know the halacha? That's everything you don't know the halacha. Well, what's chesaron yidiyah? So, I'll tell you what I always thought he meant. It's not his words. I always thought he meant is that boirer is one of those halachas that as you learn it, you realize is everywhere. You don't realize how, bishul, we know where bishul is. We're in the kitchen, you put the cholent on the flame. We know where bishul exists. We know where lush exists. You're making your oatmeal. Boirer crops up in places you wouldn't think exist. But that doesn't really work with the words chesaron yidiyah. It's not a lack of knowledge. No? Right. So there are those that shtup that in. What he means, chesaron yidiyah, is that if you were to know, then you were to recognize. I don't think it fits into the words. I don't really have a pshat, but yeah, but that's everything. No, I hear. Maybe you just want to say is that, which we're going to get to in a moment when we talk about b'diavad, is that boirer is unique, that there are so many ways of doing everything better. Okay, the words are a little bit difficult, but maybe that's what he means. Which taka would be a nice pshat, because as we're going to talk about b'diavad, boirer is one of those cases that you cannot always get your intended result if you know what to do. So maybe that's what he means by yidiyah. Okay, an interesting pshat. Because we have extra time, I'm going to quote you what maybe he means by Chasar Yediyah. The Ramchal in Sefer Eitz Chaim. I saw this on Shabbos, and I was waiting for a place to shtup it in. And I figured this is the perfect place because
Did we decide how long the show is?
he told me he wants me to speak for 2 hours. Pasha looking for fillers over here. So the Ramchal in Sefer Eitz Chaim, and Rav Flam said he doesn't want it to be boring, so I figured we have to spice it up a little bit. He doesn't want it to be dry. So the Ramchal says, Renel, right? So why do we do Averis? So I always thought we do Averis because we have a Yetzer Hara. And then the little evil monster convinces us to do the wrong thing, and we make the wrong decisions. That's what we do Averis, right? If that was true, so why don't Malachim do Averis? Because they have no Yetzer Hara, right? That's what we would think. The Ramchal says something absolutely fascinating, and I'm going to read you a few of his lines. This is in credit to Rameir Wersinger's Torah from his past parsha. Yediyah ha'emes machzekes haneshama. The yediyah, that's where I came to this piece. The yediyah of the truth grabs hold of the neshama, umarchekes mimena hayitzer vade, and it distances from him the yetzer hara. Vein davar machlish haneshama. There's nothing that weakens the neshama lefnei hayitzer, like chesaron yediyah. Those same 2 words. Chesaron yediyah. I could have pretended like a Magoin. I knew like all of Ramchal where he says Chesaron yediyah. Now it's this past week's parsha. Chesaron yediyah weakens the neshama in front of the Yetzer Hara. And therefore he says, V'mais yediyah rechava. Oh, he doesn't explain. V'mais yediyah rechava. If you had an expansive yediyah, v'imediz alev adam, and it was standing in your heart, lo yechaitin la'elam. You never do an avera. If you were to know the truth, you would never do the avera. It's the lack of knowledge of the truth is what allows the Yetzer Hara to chap you. Ach lo haya afilu hayetzer karav aleim. The Yetzer Hara, if you knew what's true, the Yetzer Hara would not be able to grab hold of you. V'shalim kimoi she'enoi sholet b'malachim. So why do the malachim not have a Yetzer Hara? Because they know the truth. If you're standing staring at a Kadosh Baruch Hu, then everything is so emes, nothing could penetrate. So the chesaron yediyah, when we live in a world of cloudiness, then we make mistakes. No one's going to stand there in the Iyun Yom Kippur as he's saying Shema Yisrael and do something wrong. At that split second, why not? Because that's a split second that he doesn't have chesaron yediyah, that he has yediyas ha'emes, and therefore. So is it the Yetzer Hara? Yeah, of course it's Yetzer Hara. But what allows the Yetzer Hara to grab hold of us is the fact that we don't see things absolutely truthfully. So that's Stam, a beautiful thought, how to deal with life. But to put it back into Bairer is the more that we know the Yediyas Ha'emes, first of all, we can use his words, there'll be no Yetzer Hara. But forget about no Yetzer Hara, is we'll know what to do right. I have to think Pshat is like you're saying. How it fits into the words, I don't know. But that's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying, is that there's ways to do everything. If you look at his example, he says, just take the one you can eat, don't take the other one, right? So the example you always give is you have a geshmaka fat steak with a big chunk of fat on it, right? A beautiful big steak with a huge piece of fat. I'm purposely talking about a big piece of fat, so you don't start telling me, no, I eat the fat. No, I'm talking about a big monster piece of fat, right? So what does everyone do? You go, you cut off the fat, you push away the fat, and then you eat your meat. That's what normal people eat. That's the regular way of eating. You do that on Shabbos, that's an Issa D'Oraisa. We throw you off the cliff. Why? Because you were Bairer, Silas, Me'oichel. So where was the Bairer? Let's play it out. You cut off the fat. Did he do any Bairer yet? No. Which we'll get back to when we talk about peeling. We're going to have to realize the cutting action isn't a separation action, a very important line. When I cut the fat, if I have a very sharp knife, right, here's my monster cowboy steak, here's a huge piece of fat, and here's the meat on the bottom. When I cut the fat, just like this, and I take my knife out, did I do any buyer? No. The fat's still standing right on top of the steak. Or did I cut it off? But it's still sitting there. What's the buyer? The buyer is that last, when I finish cutting, I take the knife and I just flip off the fat. That's the Maisa buyer. So with the greatest of ease, with the Yediyas or MS, when you know what to do, what do? You finish cutting, and what do? You just push down the meat towards yourself. and then you went from an Isser D'Oraisa to Mutter Gomer. So that's a little bit words of Akdama as we were stalling. We don't have to stall anymore. Good morning. Good morning, Avi Abbas. And now let's continue. Okay, are we all ready to roll?
Yes.
Thank you for the excitement. I appreciate it. So the first Be'er Halacha comes along. The first Be'er Halacha says, he says, what happens if you mess up? Because as we're talking about the fact that there's Bayrer everywhere, you start learning about Bayrer, you get into Shabbos, you're realizing, oh my gosh, my Sfarim Bayrer is taking away, putting back my Sfarim Bayrer. I'm come to Beis Medrash Shabbos afternoon, I take out 16 Sfarim to learn from, and I only learn from one. It was that Bayrer. I set the table Friday night for Shabbos day. It was that Bayrer. I made the salad, and the guest came late. It was that Bayrer. There's Bayrer everywhere. And then you start realizing, oh shoot, as I messed up Bayra throughout my whole Shabbos, we know there's a rule that if you mess up, B'di'ev, there's something called Ma'aseh Shabbos. So how do we view that? So the first Be'er Halacha comes along, and the first Be'er Halacha teaches us that to look at the Pri Megadim, B'di'ev and Abir Yishlam to Asal Shabbos. Why? Because you're not allowed to be Nana Mimeleches Shabbos. V'ayin Sham Hashem Mistabi Kamat Devarim Binyan Zeh. Ulam, however, Lefi Masha Kosav HaGra, Le'el, don't be machar. So first of all, Stam, just one of the famous kolam in Mishnah Berurah is the word avol, not the word ulam. Whether that's a diak or not, is that a diak, Rabbi Davis? Yesh ladim. The word avol in Mishnah Berurah, Stam, is something you need to know. This is from, I think it's from Scheinberg's klal. It's from Scheinberg's klal. And then we asked Rav Scheinberg how you know this klal. He says when you learn Mishnah Berurah as many times as I did, you'll know the klal as well. The klal is anytime the Mishnah Berurah says avol, he's paskening like the avol. Meaning if he quotes one shita and then he says avol this, he's paskening like the second shita, which, again, without that rule, the whole Mishnah Berurah would be pretty difficult to learn because he brings shitas. So over here he says ulam. Is he paskening like the second shita? Meaning is he telling you the Pri Megadim taught you that what b'di'eved everything. Be'er Halacha shartzion. We'll try to mention some of the klalim to get our feet wet. But shel is ulam l'chayr is not the klal. Okay, so what do you do with this Be'er Halacha? Now we have a Be'er Halacha, we don't know what to do. Because Be'er Halacha says it's the regular rules. Look at the gain. Don't be machmir. Problem is, you look at Shin Yud Ches, where he tells you to look. Over there, you sort of lose cheshek for pasking like the gain. Because what does he say over there in Shin Yud Ches of Katan Aleph when he brings down the gain? No. The other rule is when he tells you to look somewhere, you have to look there. Even if it's the size of Asia. So what does he say over there? No. It's one line. The chepasti masasi ber agrosh kasim masik alach da filu das shulchan aruch shapasik of Yuda hainu b'dereisam lach the rabbanon who served the loy kanto shego to mezid. Then he continues and he says, no. Where's the line? Someone help me, please. No, he says the line that makam atzerich. No, am I wrong? Weiter. The next Be'er Halacha he says. I apologize. Okay, I don't know where it is. I thought he says, doesn't he say a lashon of makam atzerich ikvi mekel? I'm wrong? That's what he means. B'di'evad, yeah, but he there is a lashon somewhere that. Okay, basically the question is: do the regular rules of Knas of Ma'aseh Shabbos apply or not? And that's also true. But here it's a deraisa. So it's a big question what to do with this Be'er Halacha. For example, You open up your classical English sefer, you open up Rafalk, and Rafalk comes along, and he says, if you do a Bayer B'Shagig, what's halacha? May not be used by anyone until Matzai Shabbos. Regular rules of Meleches, of Hana Mimaisa Shabbos. But then, if that's true, what was Be'er Halacha doing? No? No one's bothered? I'm the only one that's bothered over here? Where's he coming from? He's coming from Shin Yichas. He says, basically, he learns that this Be'er Halacha is just telling you it's the regular rules of Hana Mimaisa Shabbos. That's Rafal Paskins, and therefore, B'diavad, it's going to be Aser. If that's the case, we're going to have a very difficult next few Shabbosim in our life, because as we mess up, we're going to have big problems. So it's really not so fair, because we have to really learn Kinas Shabbos to understand what's going on over here. But there's some basic rules that might allow us to be mekel. And one of the rules is, Rav Moshe Sternbach comes along and he teaches us, first he says you have the Goin. But secondly, he says that it could be,
What is he coming to?
it comes to be mekel. He says, there was a permissible way of doing it. Therefore, afsha avar iser shabir psos loy ne'esar. Ukein zeh, 1 second, bahitza mitzad chay adam shloi asrina b'diavad she'in kan tikkun. When you go back to Shin Yud Ches, the end of the second, it's over here he quotes it? Over here he quotes it?
Oh, it's Shin Ches the second.
Shin Yud Ches, second Be'er Halacha, he says the Chay Adam says that by Haitzah, there's no kinas. Why is there no kinas? Because nothing changed. The item went from location A to location B. So it's the same item, there's no kinas. So Zakar Moshe Sternbach, we have a beautiful thing over here. Nothing changed. In my case, of my fat, if I push away the fat, right, so I'm over buyer. So now what? I can't eat the meat. Why? Nothing changed. I could have, with the same of ease, have pulled down the meat. And Zakt, there's only going to be an Isser if something changed in the item. Yes? Could be. What does he say? Can you read it?
That's Stam Makamat Serif. You were looking for the words Makamat Serif. That's Makamat Serif when you can rely on a mayor. You're allowed to rely on a mayor.
Not the Goin. That's the Goin. Oh, so maybe that's what I was looking for. Okay. So that's a Moshe Sternbach. Before putting it back. Okay, and then before putting it back, it's a different story. Shlomo Zalman in Mincha Shleima comes along and he says something which really many will say this is really the attitude you have to have. He says, Mitzada Svara Nirlini Istaiti, even though you didn't have Vera, Ina Meichel Nesar, why? Because you're not getting Hana, Klal Me'avera. Why? Because you could have gotten your permissible item without it. That's what he says. He says, Ulam, Kambazem Avur, B'Gdei they still want to aser. Meaning he says, Misvara, in the Klalim, there should be no Isser. But you go look in the Pri Megadim, and it sounds like he still wants to be Machmir. So Shlomo Zalman then says, okay, so you know what I'll tell you? On an item that you're not eating, then he'll be Mekel. What's an item you're not eating? If there's a boirer, for example, he says on Kalim, a boirer on Begadim, then B'di'evet, he says you could be Mekel. For example, someone Friday night cleans all their cutlery, and they have a big pile of forks, knives, and spoons next to their sink, and they go and they set the table Friday night, in violation of Melechas Bayer of Shnei Mini Kilim. They went and they separated the Kilim. Says Shlomo Zalman, there I'll give him that you could be Mekel. Because you're not getting Hana of Achila Shtia. It's not called Hana for the item, but he ends up whatever says Sarach Iyun. So it is a little bit difficult. I always thought that the Be'er Halacha was coming to be Mekel. That's what I thought. Not that it makes a difference what I thought. What? Why is the Be'er Halacha? What do you mean? Quotes the Pri Megadim. No, the question is, so he quotes Pri Megadim and he quotes the Goin. What is the Be'er Halacha doing? That's the question. Who said he's passing like the Goin? And the Ulam is really what's throwing us off. That's really the problem over here. And that's how we'll leave it. I definitely, you look at others from Baruch Shabbos, Fechulu, they say b'makam atzerich, they're willing to be makel, which then you go into the regular klalim and that helps you b'makam hatzerich. Reb Berkowitz says similarly. Where does Mishra say that? Again, so they're saying you can have the regular klalim of Maisa Shabbos. Stam, can you fix it? Is a new shayla. If you messed up, can you go and recreate your tareves? This is like one of those probably lumdish shaylas. Does that undo your isser? You picked out all the peas from your salad, and as you're about to eating your salad, someone told you, "Oh, you were just over bayer." So you say, "Great, I'll throw all the peas back in." Now I recreated my tareves, and now I could go and I'll eat it beheter. I'll eat out the eichel me'apselis. Does that work? Tzitz Eliezer says yes. Yeah, which we're going to get to in a moment when he talks about the Malach Shein Tzvich Legufa aspect of it. But Tzitz Eliezer comes along and he says, "Shachazar lematzav hakoidem ushalei ba'aveira shkol kegam nekuli alma yoidu shadavar chaytz lateira." That's Tzitz Eliezer says. What? That's what he's saying. Correct. And therefore, once you whatever it, it's going to be fine. And let's leave it. So the next shayla is, what do we do with a guy? What do we do with a guy? And this really opens up, and every malacha, which we're not going to do, in every malacha you could ask this kasha, right? You're going to learn teichein. Can you have a guy do it? You're going to learn every question. You're going to have to ask such a question. So,
what's the tzad heter?
Oh, what's the tzad heter? It's a malacha, right? That's what you're asking. It's a malacha. Goyim can do malacha. Good. So you're saying let's point out the basics. Also, I should have made this disclaimer. I apologize. We're 20 minutes in. If there's anything that I'm not speaking out, if we're skipping any steps, don't assume that you're stupid. But ask. No, it could be like, for example, or David just pointed out correctly that the aleph is that Amir Lakum is us. It's usser even on the deraisa. It's also even on the derabanan b'chulu. So if we ever skip a step, please just pause up and we will go back. So Amir Lakum is usser even on derabanan. So here, Bayer we know is a deraisa, which we skipped because you all learned it extensively. The Hakdama to Mishnah and Shini Yatas, which by now some would say Baal Peh. I won't say that because I don't. But the Mishnah Berurah says that each of the three Tanoim is a deraisa, which means we're mamish playing with fire. This is usually the Hakdama that we give, that it's a very unique malacha. Kimat all malacha Shabbos are derabanans. It's pretty hard to be over deraisas. Okay, we all know this Hakdama, that's why we skipped it. It's pretty hard. It's really not so true. We all say this, but is it so true?
To jump from mutter to...
Yeah, that's hard. Good. That's the right way to say it. Everyone says, "Oh, you never over." I say it also. You never over deraisas, only over derabanans. It's totally not true. People over deraisas all day and night. Who can't even give an example? I'll give you the first one that comes to my mind. You're walking up your front lawn, and you have like those rocks on the side of the thing, or you're in like a shul and like the tiles are still falling out of place, so like it moves a little bit, or the shelf is a little rickety and falls out when you take out a sitter. So in all these cases, what do? You just push back the shelf, you push back the tile, you stand up the stone. So that's an Isser Baina Daraisa. Baina Bekarka. That's Baina Daraisa. So there are cases that you could definitely be over Daraisas. Anyways, I don't know if it has to do with anything, but I was looking for a pause. Mirlakum. So can you ask a guy to do bayer for you? So the answer is, of course, not. If a guy does bayer for you, can you eat the food? So that's going to come back to our discussion over here. General, if a guy does malacha for you, it's the same iser hana'a pashtus, different column, but at some level. So really, all I'm going to quote is Rosh Zalman in Shmir Shabbos says that you tell the guy to do bayer the eichel, even though he's going to do it in a forbidden way. And that's just stam. That's just a klal in malacha that we're just going to point out the klal. I know that when I tell the guy to prepare it, he's going to do it by an isser. But who cares? I didn't tell him to do the isser. I told him to prepare me a salad. So he's going to go and prepare it however he wants to prepare it. The only shayla is going to be if it's for la'achar zman. That's where things get complicated. Meaning, can I tell the guy for shalashudis to prepare the eggs now in the morning? Because there's no way to prepare the eggs in the morning for shalashudis by ifenhet. Everyone understand the problem over here? Oh, so good. So
I need it by 5:30.
Good. So very good. Good. So that would be the answer. The answer would be by 5 o'clock, I would like egg salad made, and then let the guy do it as they see fit. If they're there, very good. The problem is, if that's not the case, guy's there for 3 hours, and it's not so simple. So I'll mention there's a Avnei Yeshba, which I was told is a very fun tshuva sefer, which we're not going to talk about at the moment. He hasn't. You told him about the tshuva picking the nose?
Yeah.
Okay. Mardik tshuva. So he here has a tremendous tshuva, and she says, "Mutter leimer legoy." Oh, by the way, the reason why it's such a big shayla is peeling fruit, which we didn't learn yet, is mutter, but only for miyad. That's the halacha. So anytime you're going to be asking a guy to peel fruit for you, it has to be for miyad. Okay, let's go oranges to be simple. Oranges, melons, avocado, all these type of things. So anytime, which it's a 7, we're going to get there. It's actually not in your test, but okay, we'll get there. But it has to be miyad. We have to get there. I'll just open the question. Yeah. He says the mutter from miyad. No, I mean, just ask the question. If I have an orange, why am I allowed to peel off the peel? I'm taking pselas meichel. Okay, so is that mutter and gansin? Is that mutter? Okay, so we have to learn. We pass it only from miyad, which we're gonna have to get to. Which you just took a leap and you just said that any time. What do you say? He sent you there. He said Ayin Sham. He told you to go look there. Kim, that was a horrible raya. He says this is like that. Kim Meser Klipa. He didn't say that Meser Klipa is mutter in every case. Correct. Again, we're asking questions in open sifim and words of Mishnah Berurah and Beralachos. Let's learn it, and then we'll come back and we'll have to answer. Is there a stira? Is there not a stira? Is he just referencing it? Let's get. But all I'm pointing out is that it's only mutter for miyad. So when you ask the cleaning lady to cut the watermelon, you ask her to do the avocado, you ask her to do all these things, it's only for miyad. So is there ever going to be a heter? So the Avnei Yeshua has a fascinating tshuva in which he wants to come along and he says, Mutter loimer legoy liklev peiros b'shachris avar achile b'sudah shlishis b'shabbos. He says it's mutter. Why is it mutter? He says not because of muksa. Someone wanted to tell you because of that. He says the reason is because he says he is soid in a mir lakum, which isn't fair because we didn't learn a mir lakum. But he says atam she'itzel Yehudi oimim she'yodem mashati oitzah shel meisav. It's the same heter about a sikresha. I'm allowed to tell a guy to open a fridge even though the light turns on, because by goyim we view it by their action, we don't view it by their kavan. Sikresha that happens afterwards for a guy is mutter. So he says he wants to say the same things over here. The pure action they're doing is going to be mutter. Who cares the fact that it's being done for lachar zman? That's not shaykh to Isra Mir Lakum. A fascinating heter he wants to give. Now, the question, which Rabbi Stillerman here jumps and screams, he says, I don't know what you're talking about. You got to learn a Mir Lakum. For example, Hachana is also an Amir Lakum. That's the most basic thing that all has to do with Kavana. You're not allowed to tell a guy, do this for tonight. You're not allowed to tell him, do it, and you want it for tonight. So why would that be a heter here? I'm just pointing it out. A fascinating heter, and we'll leave it. This is a sefer called the Avnei Yeshva, who he wants to be Mekel. Okay, let's move on. Do people rely on that? I don't see why there would be any reason to rely upon it. I don't see why. So now you're talking about miyad. Good. So let's go into miyad. When it comes to miyad, we also have to machlekes rishonim as to why there's a heter. Correct? I'm getting blank faces. What's the two reasons why bayrer for miyad is mutter? Or, well, that's the same thing. Or it's called a shinoi, where you all jumped on me about, right? When you saw it the first time, what did Rashi say? What did Rashi say? The lashon was that it's a shinoi. The lashon was that Rashi in Derech Barim, very good. Yeah, you are right. You're right in Rashi. Excuse me. There are other Rishonim that want to learn that the reason is because it's called a shinoi. I just wanted to bring out the kasha. The kasha that you all asked is a kasha that the Magen Avos in the Sefer Shvish Shabbos asks the kasha. You were asking it on the kli, but it's the same kasha on the Rishonim that say the heter of miyad is al shinoi. They say that it's Taisus. Taisus is the one that uses the lashon of shinoi. That the reason why it's mutter for miyad is because it's a shinui of the normal way of doing it. So the Magen Avos asks your kasha. That's the only reason why I'm pointing this out. Is you all asked when you saw by Keli, you said, why does a shinui, will that ever make it a heter? And he asks that if it's because of shinui, kalacher yad is aser midrabanan. So what does it help to tell me that it is a shinui? That is the question. One second, let me just find you the names and faces. Where does Taisa say that it's all shinoi? So, okay, the Shvisa Shabbos says that Taisus has to be l'shitasa. He's whole shtickle Torah in Taisus. Because Taisus holds by psilas mubral eichel, you're allowed to be bayrer the psilas. And what in the case of psilas meruba, that complicated Taisus where he references Hilchos Yamtif. But if you're going to be bayrer the eichel, then it's going to be chayv. So the Shvisa Shabbos says, l'fi Taisus, you can't tell me that the heter is derech achila, because derech achila can't be to take out the pselas. That's not called achila. That's a gufa called fixing or preparation. So the Shvisa Shabbos says it must be that Taisus is learning it's called whether it's darkei bekach or not, and it has to be that Taisus is learning it's ba'if and shinoi, similar to what you find by the different kelim, and therefore he wants to say that's mutter. Again, all I wanted to point out is that they asked this kasha, and the teretz that the Magen Avos gives is not to hate on the Magen Avos. I don't find this such a kishmag teretz. He says, what do you mean? We find other times that a shinoi can make something mutter, ayin hilchas teichen. Okay, two wrongs don't make a right. Over there, we're going to learn teichen, and everyone asks, mecha teisi that a shinoi makes it mutter. And they come along and they say, because it's a shinoi gamor, it's not normal, v'chulu v'chulu. But, okay, that's what we wanted to point out. But the pashtus is what you're all saying is because derech achila. Now, why is derech achila make a mutter? Why does that make a mutter? Good. So what you're saying is the Geraz is lashon. The Geraz says ein zem ein melocha klau, which is a yisoid. The way you just said it's not bayrer. It's a yisoid we find by certain melachis, which is really like Rabbi David's pointed out. Anytime you're going to go from chayiv to mutter, mutter is odd. Malacha is never mutter. Malacha is the word malacha by its very nature means it's malacha, it's aser. So sometimes you'll have it's not a daraisa, it's a darabanan, right? But to make it mutter is very difficult. When is anything ever mutter? You fulfill conditions, or it's not the malacha. That's always the way you have to say it. So that's how the Graz says over here. He says that once you're doing it for la'alter, it's derech achila, and it's not a malacha bechlal. It's not a malacha bechlal. Now, why is it not a malacha bechlal?
Then why is there going to be another rule that if that's a heter that shakes it down, why nothing overrides that?
So good. It's good. So then now you have to start saying Torah within what is the mahos of the malacha. Yeah, it gets very complicated. Yeah, it gets very complicated. You are correct. You're absolutely correct. It's definitely not such a geshemaka zach. Now, um, there's a chedushi aran over here that I saw yesterday, which has a fascinating heter. Because we just learned that lalter is mutter. If it's not lalter, not only is it not mutter, it's a deraisa, usually. The Ran wants to come along and he wants to be mechalik, because what's the lashon? If it's not lalter, what is it? It's la'itzer. It's la'itzer. What does it mean it's la'itzer? It means it's storage. So the simple way of saying this in English is that if I'm doing something in the eating process, it's mutter. If I'm not doing the eating process, it's the storage process. If it's a storage process, it's aser. Zaktaran, what if there's something you don't store? It's like one of those questions that someone would ask and you smack them. What if there's something you don't store? You're telling me it's la'itzer. He says, but something that is not normal to do la'itzer, zaktaran, then even not la'alter is going to be mutter. Because the whole problem of doing something not la'alter is la'itzer, but it's not something that's la'itzer. And therefore, zakt the ran, it's mutter. So, of course. Now, you have a ran, so usually at this point we would say, okay, shkoyach, he found me a rishon, and it doesn't really help me. Doesn't really help me. We'll say a case in a moment. But if some Zalman comes along, and he wants to say that when it comes to begadim and svarim, he says you don't sort begadim la'itzer. Now that's bothering all of you because you do sort begadim la'itzer. Oh, not even. Forget about the end of summer. Everyone's here. Switch overseas. There's a bunch of females over here. Forget about summer. Stop. You put away your laundry. Hello. You sort the laundry to put it away. That's called lighter. Lighter doesn't have to be for 6 months. Put away my laundry. I understand. It's one of the hatirim of. So. Yeah, you're not using it. I'm folding up the socks. That's what lighter means. Anyways, Rishon Zalman wants to be makel based on this ran. He wants to say, "Kol davar shleinoagim liver la'itzer ein chayavin alav efshir diyesh lahakam begadim usfarim." He wants to be makel by begadim and svarim, and the machshev sefer who's whom, whatever. He asked him, Rishon Zalman, what you all just said. He says, la'itzer perusha is makim achsoin lizman l'chayir begadim aderech lachsoin ba'aron l'kama yamim. And therefore he says, I don't understand what Rishon Zalman is talking about. And efshir he's makel on it. Well, what's the havamina? Why is it not called eitzer? It's eitzer. We store our clothing. I'll tell you why I wanted to bring this down. I wanted to bring this down is because we're going to get to a shaila, which we're not going to get to today, which is what is called the altar, or how far does the altar go? As the Stam raid you all saw, the raid of Lisha, Kisha, the Mordechai, the Chazon Ish, a very famous Chazon Ish, a story with the Chazon Ish which makes it more complicated in Nachlas Leo, is raid. We can read the story together. But there are those who want to say, how do we view la'alter if it's not, I'll say it in words and I'll give you the example, it's not in proximity, but it's the only time to do it. For example, I guess that's the way to say it. For example, you want to, I'll give you 2 examples that he talks about. You want to put something in the freezer. The freezer, by its nature, takes 3 hours to make it frozen, to make it cold. You want to put something in the fridge. Let's not get involved in freezing things. You want to put something in the fridge before the sudas. You want to put soda in the fridge, and your soda is a tarevis. Now, where your soda is a tarevis, I don't understand the case. But let's pretend you put, and they're all where? And where are they? They're all okay. Say there. We have to get to the case. I'll have to get to the case, but fine. A case where they're all a mess. Let's go. You have cans of soda in a bucket. Yeah, and they're all mixed. Can you say can on Shabbos? No, Kev, I didn't want to get involved in the whole freezing story. Okay, freeze pops for the kids, it's mutter. Gewaltig, good. For anyone who's a kid at heart. Yes, it's mutter. Einig Shabbos, allowed to freeze it. Gewaltig. So now, you want to obviously freeze what color? What? Yeah, for some reason everyone likes the blues. I don't understand it. Blues are good, but red? I'm not sure I understand it. I understand. Mango, the marine, you know what I'm talking about. The good freeze pops. Yeah, the Weilers. There's blue. No sheikhs. Okay, say that he just had a kid. Forgive him. So, you want to take out those ones and you want to put them in the freezer. Is that allowed? So you're saying, okay, miyad. It's not miyad. Which, by the way, again, I skipped over the alphabet. I figured that every time you're donning a shayla bayer, you just have to ask yourselves the three questions. Is it miyad, biyad, and eich b'tech? This time your brain just goes into that mode very simply. So is this eich b'tech? Yes, because it's the one you want. Is it biyad? Yes, using your hands. And is it miyad? The answer is no. Putting it in the freezer for the next 5 hours.
We have to know exactly when it finishes.
Oh. So first of all, yeah, that's stam. How OCD you have to be? Rav Yashiv was ganz fine OCD when he was making fun the other day. No, it's a suffix. You can't do it. Finished. We'll get there, maybe. But that's just the hack part of the shir at the end. But
we still need a mice.
The mice of the chazanish. That's part of the hack part of the shir. Yeah. So is that called miyad? Is that called miyad? Another story. You want to. This is what the Sfarim write down. Now, whoever knows how to do this with their kids, please let me know. What? So what's your ayah?
He said only do it as far as you actually need.
Could be a variety, yeah. What does Mishmur say? Yeah.
Be careful with
Rak Samach L'Suda. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's what you made up. That's not what he said.
I claim it might be miyad.
Yeah, you put it in.
That's not
Yeah, L'Suda should bury all in Atoivim and Akamushim Mitzvah and Shlo Yas is a Rak Samach L'Suda. The opposite. He says not like you all just said. He says it should be right beforehand. It says right beforehand. That's not a raya. Maybe that's right for carrot, but that's not a raya. Either way, another case the Paiskim want to talk about is you want to prepare your children's clothing the night before. So they wake up in the morning, obviously like little tatalas, and they get up, they wash negelvasser, use the bathroom, wash their face off, and then they get dressed all by themselves. Shabbos and Shabbos. And they get dressed all by themselves. Are you allowed to set out their clothing? Okay, so again, has this ever worked for anyone? Oh, so good. The life hack, good. We said over life again. Okay, we have to say it over again. This is an important life hack. Important life hack. One day your wives will like you. Is that the life hack people say? What is a life hack? A hack for life. You have something tonight. Why buy rice every day? You got to get the kids off in the morning to school. So America has decided we have something called pajamas. So we put on pajamas at night. Why? No one in the world knows. Probably because of the made of halacha that you're not allowed to sleep in your clothing, which no one ever in the world knows where that came from. What? Shoes. Okay, shoes. Seder. He says not, you're just going to forget your Torah. For girls, they don't have a problem necessarily. And then they get up in the morning, and then you have to change. Chachma of America. Gewaltig. Then you have to get pajamas. Whoever designed such a thing. So what do you do? The night before, Shalom Aleichem, what do you want to wear tomorrow? First of all, stop. It's geschmack to pick your clothing the night before. So little kids don't wear white shirts like you. So it's not a problem. So they put on their clothing and they go to sleep. Yit Shabbos. Too much Shabbos. Good. So you don't wear the shirts. You just wear the tzitzis, obviously. The tzitzis and pants. Socks. Yesh Ladin on your grandmother's myth whether you're allowed to sleep in socks or not. You have your ear off to ear out. But anyways, that's the life hack. Is put the kids to sleep the night before in their clothing.
This is for during the week.
For sure during the week. For sure during the week. Yedom is a bus. Next. Okay. Where were we? So it's Frektor of Shem Zalman. Clearly he didn't have this like back in Rechavia. So because they had a whole issue finding the kid's shoes. Kiyadua. His daughter's shoes. Oh, he hid his daughter's shoes on Shabbos. Nice. Didn't want her to play with the neighbors. It seems like all my mice are made up for. David doesn't know them. I'm not. The kids, are you allowed to do the boyer the night before? That's the shayla. I think Rabbi Hoffman brings down the mice. Hoffman. Yeah. I think he brings down the mice. The mice that they say was Rav Shlomo Zalman didn't want his daughter to play with certain kids on the block. So one Shabbos afternoon, the daughter said she wants to go play. And Yishlad and how he said it to her, but the postscript of the story was she couldn't find her shoes. So what I ask at this point is, let's go without shoes. Like, that's stopping you from going to play with the neighbor? Never understood that one. But they say he hid the daughter's shoes so that she wouldn't go play with the neighbor he didn't want her to play with. So you got to do boyer the night before for the next morning. That's the $1 million shayla. Relative boyer. So the reason, I'm sorry, we are very sidetracked. The reason I like this Chadushay Aran, whether you like Rav Shlomo Zalman or not, is because if Rav Shlomo Zalman is willing to say something which is not la'oitzer, Shlomo Zalman declares after yesh lahakel to do boyer on those items. Now we're going to have a clear on this thing called relative proximity, relative miyad. Is it called miyad or not? So l'chayra with an extra tziruf of the ran, l'chayra you could be makel. I'm going to end before the hak. Yeah. Which again, that's part of the akdam that we didn't say. Thank you. What's I was saying? Part of the akdam we didn't say is if it's not a tarayves, nothing starts. Which by the way, your brain has to. That's one of the things you get confused about. Like you start like, oh my gosh, can I cut my meat? Wait, miyad, and like wait, there's no psalis. Okay, so it's mutter. It needs a tarayves. So yeah, assuming it's a tarayves. Oh, so you're asking what's a tarayves? That is the $1 million question that we won't talk about. That's a wonderful question. It's a wonderful question. That's what he says. It's all the Mefarshim explained by BM is later. Yeah, I want to end off. I have to be very careful. We just said maybe a tziruf of Iran, Rav Shlomo Zalman. So I'm going to end before we go to the hak with Miyad. Is Rafalk has a very famous tshuva in which he quotes what he calls Echad mi b'chabrei zmanenu that wants to be Mekel. Rafalk, you'll tell him the story later. Rafalk's Machzil, right? So Machzil, who had a skama from Shlomo Zalman at age
28.
There you go. So he was quite the guy. So he quotes Echad mi b'chabrei zmanenu that wants to be Mekel. Legamri bibriers kli suda. There is a sefer, and then he actually tells you who the sefer is, that says that cutlery is not a problem of bayer. Do what you want. It's a sefer, it's Rav Avadia Yosef, it's Shuvas Yabia Omer. And he then goes on that Rav Avadia has 3 hatirim, 3 tzirufim ba'akel. The Machzal Yo then goes, it says, Lanias daiti, b'mechilas kavai terasik. Ein siruf snifim elu dai lahatir sofik iser be'echon b'chiyuvei skila shabbatayr. He says you could have all the tzirufim in the world, but if you're going to be making on a daraisa, you need to have a real tziruf. Now, one of the things that Rav Avadia wanted to be mitzaref is the Ar Sameach. Ar Sameach talks about Bayer Shnei Mine Kelim, and he wants to say that maybe for Miyad it's going to have a heter, which similarly Rav Shlomo Zalman brings down. And all I want to point out is that not every name, when you're talking about the Araisas, you should be willing to be makel on Stam Atzirif. That was, so just be very, very wary. Just to end with the hak on the altar, what's the altar? So basically, there's many shitais. You have Rabbeinu Chananel that says for the whole Suda. You have Rabbeinu Yerucham. Everyone say Rabbeinu Yerucham? Rabbeinu Yerucham says, yes, but he says as long as it's not for Suda la Suda, Thank you. That's how the Beis Yosef understood it. Grada the Drisha understood. Not that way. Then you have a Mordechai. And the Mordechai comes along, and the Mordechai says that it's something to do with a Shah. He says, if you're doing it for now, but to do it for Achar Shah, it's Kibayr La'itzer. Now, what does the Mordechai mean? Is he arguing on the other Shitais? What exactly does this Mordechai mean? So you all saw Ramesha, and Ramesha says as much time as the Suda needs, which l'chayr is the way you got to go. You go with Ramesha, and that's the end of the story. But there's a Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish in the Sefer Nachlas Eliyahu, they quote the following story. As soon as they Nachlas Eliyahu, Sha'alti, may I go in atzoyer bal Chazon Ish b'mitbach. No, they didn't ask him in the kitchen. No. Let's try again. B'mitbach she'eichlin harbe anashim b'yachad b'Shabbos Kodesh. Maybe they did ask him in the kitchen. How do you know that?
Depends how the next words go.
Yeah. But Tzarech Lamishari's harbe zman lahachen is at sunoin v'abitzolim. He needs a lot of time to prepare the eggs and onions. Are they able to start? Kivan, right? What's the shaylo? Good. That's what they asked the Chazon Ish. The nunnik that bothered the Chazon Ish. Maybe this is called samach. That's 3 hours before the amount of eggs and onions these bachar made. But maybe it's called samach. Upashat le'isur Chazon Ish. Dezeh loy mikri samach lesuda. The chol ish ain't shaykh lechaveroi. Ad kan.
Bas can unite them.
So you say they can't
Ad kan. Kol ma shemaktim yiser gomer ve'in motel aschel rak le'erech chatzi shah samach lesuda.
Really dushn.
Earlier Dushnitzer and Sefer Nachlas Eliyahu. This is a Chazon Ish. So I guess we should just end with that.
Halach l'maaseh.
That's a Chazon Ish. Again, so now all the Gedalim start weighing in what exactly to do. What exactly should they do? Yeah, I mean, whatever. Rav Yashiv and Rachayim, they all want to get involved. So now that you have your Chatzi Shah, what about Lekula? What about Lekula? Yes. What about Lekula? La'erech Chatzi. La'erech to prepare. What about Lekula Chatzi Shah? So comes along.
You're one person and you would need 5 minutes.
Comes on the Shevet Alevi. Shemutel haschel lever Chatzi Shah samul lesuda af im yoidea she'enoi tzarich la'asik ba'achoneis b'meshach kol Chatzi Shah. V'rotza achach lotzis l'tayal la'asik b'dvarim achirim. Shevet Alevi. Negative Ramesh. Remnissing Perelitz says the Vadin Isht. Shears out l'chumra v'loy l'kula. Im yesh harmachon shach lebarim kodem masuda rei da'ad Chatzi Shah era kodem masuda. Until that's as much as we give you. Mikri shu derech achilo shavunei adam regil lachem machilim machleim kodem masuda. Avol yoysim mizman zeh. Av she'oisei b'achonis la'achilo mikomaku kvar loy mikri derech achilo. Ve'ein b'zeh tir dil alter. So that is what the norm Suda preparations is. That's how they learn it. 5 dakot. So I'll tell you, the only reason I quote this is to show that we have no sheikhs to Torah. And
To give chesed.
yes, obviously. No, and to say that whenever we say it's impossible anyone says anything, we should realize things are possible. because the Chazon Ish, Rav Vosner, Rav Nissi Karelitz, they're all learning. Both, I think, I don't even know which is more extreme. Is it more extreme to say that you can't prepare for 2 hours because that's just too far? Or is it more extreme to say, even if it's 5 minutes, you could prepare a half hour before? Both are extremes. But they're clearly learning, like this Mordechai, they're clearly learning that this vard in a chatzi shah, this vard in a kamoy shah, is that Chazal determined what's the normal amount of time for a Suda preparation, and it's be'erech shah, and that's as long as you get. Not more, not less. I need 3 hours. I don't care what you need. For sure not. For sure. If you're the Chazon Ish, a normal, you're having guests over at 12:30. Yeah? So 1 second. At 11 o'clock, you're not preparing for the Suda? Of course you are. You're setting the table, you're making the salad, you're doing a million things. I mean, the Gedolim took on that way, or this Carlson and Shev Levi took on that way. I hear they all take on that it's a time issue. I understand what you're saying. No, they're all saying it's nothing to do with even for yourself. They have a problem with it. Yeah, they're talking about stam, a case of you need more time. So Rav Yashiv Grad, I think, might say what you're saying. Rav Yashiv says, I'll read you his words. Rav Yashiv says, Sarch Leimar, Demayri Shem Soya Dim Yachad Baisasha. Ve'ein is Shaykh Lachaveri. Hainu Leimar. She'ein Laharich Mishum Kach. As Zaman Ha'achana Kaidim HaChatzi Shah. The Lord is this word of Chatzi Shah. And you want to extend it. Don't do that. The Achana Kaidim Chatzi Shah Eina Nitfeles La'achila. More than a half hour doesn't become nitfel to your eating. Gam K'shemechan La'atzmai Ulusaidim Al Shulchanei. That's what Yashiv is explaining this Chazon Ish. And this is this Ali B'd Helchasa is quoting the Chazon Ish. So they're learning, so we're saying, what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to eat? So that's not a kasha. So you do it before Shabbos. How am I supposed to get my food warm? I'm not allowed to put it on the flame. Okay, so we call the crackpot. But I want to have a saucy meat. How am I supposed to warm up Shabbos morning? It's usher. Well, what do you mean? It's usher. So the Chazon Ish learned that the Tanai of miyad is miyad in what a normala miyad of a Suda is. Be'erech hashah. You want to have more than that? You're not allowed. You have other things to do. Okay, that's your problem. That's how the Chazon Ish learned. I just want to point out, I don't think it's like obscene. We're looking at the Chazon Ish like it's like he's pashut, I don't think that's what it is. Oh, so before we get back to Ramesha, by the way, it was the Lumji Yeshiva. Yeah. And then again, this is where, they want to say that it wasn't the Chazon Ish, that was the Dushnitzers, types of the Chazon Ish, and maybe because there weren't enough Bachrim, whatever it is. Lemaisa, the conventional psak is like Ramosha. Lemaisa, they quote Rav Yashiv in L'Chomer and L'Kula. They quote Rav Yashiv as Grad is saying the same thing. And the Velt is but the Velt seemingly is not Chayshish for this Chazon Ish. And also not L'Kula. No one should say, oh, well, at least let's take the Chazon Ish L'Kula. And now that I got to make my one salad, but I want to go pick up my husband from shul, hey, I got a half hour, so I'll do that at 30 minutes before. And I sit down at 12 o'clock, I'll do it at 11:30, I'll finish 11:35. Now I can go walk to shul, get there at 11:45, walk home, get home 11:55, sit down for 5 minutes, and then start the Suda. That l'chayra is certainly not allowed. And that's mamash what Ramesha says. Ramesha says the derech for whatever the Suda is necessary, and that's l'chayra, the psak halacha, and we're going to leave it at that. Do you have to be OCD? Pashtus is not, but Yesh Ladin in general is a different story. But Pashtus is not. Pashtus is not. And that's the Chayra Ramesha is coming to teach us. Well, what is that's where Ramesha really is coming to teach us. Yeah, they also in the Dirshu. It's Dalid Ayin Dalid Yid Gimel. Dalid Ayin Dalid Yid Gimel. Ein Shah Zu Shal Shir Shah El Azman Shaderach. Ramesha Mamish comes to fight on the Chazon Ish. That's really what he's come to say. He's saying it doesn't mean that's an hour. It means that's the derech of whatever it is. But Ramesha clearly is learning it's the amount of time that's necessary for the Seuda. Okay, we're well over our time allotted limit by a long shot. That was well over 25 minutes, even with the Musar and the stories. We'll just end with make sure you see the Navardik Rav in Aruch HaShulchan, in which he comes along to argue in the Sefer Yeshua's Yankiv, quoted by the Bir Halacha, in which the Bir Halacha asks the fundamental kasha of what is called, why is it mlacha tzricha legufa? And the Bir, what is it? I should go back to basics. Okay, so that was last week. So mlacha tzricha legufa is that you're only going to be usher on Shabbos if you need the item that you're doing the malacha on. I take my cholent, I put it on the flame. The malacha is being done, and I'm utilizing the item that the malacha is being done. Over here, when I pick my peas out of my salad, and I eat the salad, I'm not eating the peas. So by definition, the malacha is einay tzrich legufa. When I bite my nail on a Tuesday, and the Chazon Ish called him a machalel Shabbos. Why? Because you bite on a Tuesday, you'll vade bite it on Shabbos. And then when you bite it on Shabbos, you're over malacha. Why are you over malacha? You don't need the nails. No one in the world has a nail collection. So that's called the malacha she'einay tzricha legufa. L'chayr. It's not, which makes it usually a derabanan, not a deraisa. So over here, if we're coming along by Bayrer, and we're saying one of the conditions is makes it a deraisa. How can it be deraisa? That is the Bir Halacha's kasha. He quotes the Yeshua's Yankiv, which was who?
No, Yaakov Pfeiffer.
The Lulav Rebbe, no? Yeshua's Yankiv. Wasn't the Lulav Rebbe?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Don't know why that's in my brain. Remnants of Ribnitz. So the Bir Halacha comes along, and what does Bir Halacha say? He says you need it's a stracha l'tzricha legufa because it's mitaking the oichel. That's what Bir Halacha learns. That when you have psilus with your oichel, it's called a broken Shuz Yaakov. Bir Halacha calls it Shuz Yaakov. Now, if that's pshat, now we have to take that pshat and introduce it into all areas of Bayer. So what about a case of Shnei Minei Eichler? You're going to tell me that it... Bir Halacha himself asked the kasha? What does he say? What does he say? What does he explain? Takashver. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I messed up. That's his kasha himself. I thought that was the Sefer Teres Malachas asking the kasha. You are correct. I'm sorry. So the Aruch HaShulchan, that's all I wanted to point out, in Sif Yud Tes, is very upset with this issue. Is Yaakov, and he wants to say a different shot. He wants to say a very fundamental yesod in all malachos. That's why it's a Gishmak Aruch HaShulchan. He says that there are malachos. This is one of the answers by Geizes. He says there are malachos in which the way they were done in the Mishkan was einay tzricha legufa, and therefore they break all rules. And therefore he says that is the malacha. Kivin chayiv Mishkan kain chayiv. Yeah. This is because I thought is the Marmakim. Aruch HaShulchan. Now the Aruch HaShulchan's problem is the case of mace that the Bir Halacha quotes, and he says that he doesn't like the Dimyan, and therefore he wants to come along, and he says that it's a Taisus in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis by Soiser. Taisus says Machol Malachas and Chayavin Kumay Shahaya b'Mishkan Which, by the way, is another akdama that we skipped. Is many people, when they learn every malacha, they start with what is the makar in the Mishkan. You open the foremost sefer, English sefer on Hilchas Shabbos, was Ribiyat. The first page in every malacha is connecting it back to the Mishkan. Connecting it back to the Mishkan. This is one of the reasons, because once you connect it back to the Mishkan, you see that, that of course it makes sense that it's a deraisa ain't tzrich liguf, because the Mishkan was. Happens to be, there's more times it breaks the rule than it is the rule. So sometimes you just get yourself more confused when you try to connect it back to the Mishkan. But that is the story. And with that, we'll move to Sif Dalid. There's a lot more raid in Sif Gimel, but I think we've overstayed our welcome many times over. And Rabbi Flam will be giving tomorrow.